I think the biggest thing for me as an artist, and I hope for other artists, is just stay true to your voice and just make it for you. I think make it for you, but then find people to share it with. And it might be a neighbor or other artists. I think the responsibility of the artist is more than just making art. I think if you're making art, you need to figure out a way into community. And sometimes it's really hard. And sometimes you're going to be told no, but there's an empty storefront or there's some way to get together and do it. It doesn't have to be hierarchical. It can be open. And I think that's it. Just be open to possibilities. I think that there's a lot of insecurity in the art making that comes through social media, that comes through comparing. And it just doesn't do anybody any good. And it's just going to make you feel bad. And how do you make work from a place of feeling bad or feeling otherized? And, the challenges aren't easy. But I do think just keep coming back to why do I make this work and why do I want to make it?
Hello, friends. It's Donnabelle, your host of To Hum is Human, the podcast where we explore the transformative power of tuning into our intuition to help us express our passionate purpose. I'm so thankful you're here. In this episode, The Art of Belonging, Community, Creativity, and Courage, we'll explore what it means to build spaces where artists and audiences feel seen, how belonging shows up in creative practice, and the role of courage in both art making and community building. I'm so excited to introduce my next guest. Dean Brown is an artist and director of Pulp, a contemporary gallery in Holyoke, Massachusetts. Dean's career has been as multifaceted as his art. His creative practice spans sculpture, photography, and drawing, with work exhibited nationally and reviewed in publications including the New York Times, Art in America, and Paper Magazine, among others. His latest projects, Artifacts and Undercover, transform discarded materials, objects found on the street, and vintage book covers into artworks that explore memory, resilience, and reimagined possibility. He founded Pulp in 2019. Each year, Pulp presents 10 exhibitions featuring a diverse range of local, national, and international artists, and it also travels annually to New York City to participate in the Outsider Art Fair. Before relocating to Western Massachusetts in 2005, Dean served as the chief photographer at the Brooklyn Museum for 12 years, documenting groundbreaking exhibitions and artists while honing his own visual language. He holds a BA in psychology from Denison University, a background that informs his lifelong curiosity about people, creativity, and the spaces where we come together. Welcome, Dean.
Thanks for having me, Donnabelle. It's great to be here.
Now, Dean, you've worn many creative hats: sculptor, photographer, gallerist. When you look back, what first pulled you into the world of art?
Photography was the first thing. It was my junior year in college. I had signed up to do a semester in Israel. I am Jewish, but not practicing, and thought this would be a good way to explore my heritage. And a couple months before I was due to go, the program got canceled. And in that moment, I had just picked up a camera, fallen in love with the process, took a class, and I was hooked. And so instead of going to Israel, I went to New York City and did a semester working with the photographer for Brooklyn Academy of Music. His name is Ton Carvarlia. He taught at FIT, and he was very grounded in black and white, darkroom work. And I got to photograph all the dress rehearsals at BAM. So I didn't even know who 12th Art was or Philip Glass. And so all these incredible dance performers and musicians, I had a front row seat to. And it transformed my life. I got hooked by the art of photography, which even at that time was being questioned as an art form. It's sort of hard to go back to that point and remember that, but it was sort of controversial. So that was the seed of it. It was photography, particularly street photography and wandering around the Lower East Side in the early 1980s and meeting people on the street. And so that was my passion.
And photography also literally gives you a different lens. It's like you're looking through this
Absolutely.
aperture and you're looking at the world through this tiny opening, but then seeing a world that is just more broad than we could possibly imagine.
Yes. We grow up in these communities that are perhaps sort of homogenous or a suburb, and to land in New York City, it just was a myriad of possibilities.
you studied psychology before pursuing art more fully. How has that shaped the way you see people, communities, and even the work you create?
I guess at one point I did think I was going to go into that field, and I just it was the turning point was picking up the camera. But I really enjoyed studying psychology, and I feel like the more we can understand people and what motivates them and how we move through the world, I've always had that interest, in particularly looking at myself and how I move through the world and who I am. And so I think, if anything, it allowed me to kind of hone into a sensitivity that I felt in the world and bring that to my experiences.
I imagine it was also a way of connecting to people, perhaps maybe not personally, but just through observation, especially with a camera, and finding ways of, wow, we're all human. And what does that look like?
Yeah, it's, I think the great thing about particularly street photography is if you're open to sort of folding yourself in for a little bit into where people live and how they move around. New York was endlessly fascinating. It was gritty. Keith Haring was making work on the street, and Mapplethorpe was active. The Guerrilla Girls. It was a really exciting time to be in New York. Yeah, it changed me. I think that ability to sort of put yourself in other people's shoes and have compassion is just so integral and key to being human.
Were you working mostly in black and white also at that time?
Yes, it was mostly black and white. Yeah. So the Tri-X and the Nikon camera and the darkroom chemicals. And
So
yeah, there was
analog
some,
nowadays.
I know it's so analog, and that magic of watching the image show up. And it was just a different world.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
and you were lucky to be in that time because that was quite an intense and vibrant period of creativity in New York City. And there's something
Yes.
about black and white photography that really puts it in a stark perspective in some ways
Yeah.
because of the contrast. But there's also a way in which it really pares everything down to simplicity.
Yeah, the beautiful tones of black and white, and I think I'm still doing it through the phone using, an app to create black and white images. It's just a different tool, but I still love black and white, and through these 20 tones, you can create just a beautiful image.
Now, your recent work, Artifacts and Undercover, are made from found materials, objects carrying the residue of their lives. What drew you to these materials and what kinds of stories do they hold for you?
Well, I had sort of a major life shift a few years ago, and I moved from the hill towns to Holyoke. And I found myself walking around the streets quite a bit. And I noticed that there were literally artifacts from old buildings everywhere along the river. And there were some mills that were sort of half demolished that I still had access to go in. And so I think it was just the remnants of what was here, and feeling the history in these objects. And you can't fake that. It's just built into the patina and the age. And they're like bones littering the streets of Holyoke. And I think at that point, I wasn't really sure what I was going to make. Most of my art making through the years has been project based. So here I was again picking up these objects, and I started drawing on them. And then the book covers as well. I inherited them from an artist, Dean Nimmer, who passed away a couple of years, and he was an important artist curator in the Holyoke area and taught at Mass Art for a long time. And I think was a controversial but beloved artist who was influential in a lot of people's lives. So after he died, I was cleaning out his studio, and he had a shelf full of book covers that had been taken off of the books. And I just brought them to my studio, didn't have any plans of doing anything. And Dean had a way of really pushing you to make work. And so I swear I heard his voice say, just make something with these, would you? So I had never done any sort of cutting up or collage of anything. And so at that point, really what I told myself is all you need to do is cut these things up and put them together. And so it felt like what was possible,
Mm.
what I could do. And I kind of lost myself in the surface of the materials and the color and the shapes and the forms. And I think it's so often for me, art is, or making art is about what's at hand and what's in front of me. And I think that's true for a lot of artists. I didn't go to art school. I don't have a history in an academic history in art. So for me, it's very intuitive, and it just happened. It bubbled up and happened. And I think then received some support through people seeing what was happening and gave me enough courage to go on. I think that oftentimes for me, I know this is true for other artists, having courage to make a mark is real. There's a sense of what now, or how can I make something that will resonate? And so I feel like that process is so important because it reveals who we are. And if we're lucky, we can find tools in our tool bag that allow us to move forward, even when we're scared.
Mm.
And so I think of artists as being really brave. So it's brought a lot of love for making and for makers. And so yeah, now once a week I travel up to Gray Matters Books in Hadley, Massachusetts, and they have a metal cabinet with free books that are bound for the dumpster, and that's where I go for my art supplies.
Oh, amazing. I'm curious about your process of selecting because, going into a bin with free books, it's like sometimes I just can't help myself. Or even just
I
walking
know.
through the
Yeah.
streets, like what pulls you to actually pick up an item and what are you looking for?
I think I know it when I see it is the best way I can describe it. It's just something that I think has an inherent beauty that I think what I'm trying to do is take this object that already in itself is a wonder and make a whisper of a mark on it that kind of respects the work, but allows me to be in communication and with it. And I think that's it. It's intuitive. I mean, I've brought a lot of stuff to the studio and I end up not using it. For a while I was grabbing a lot more than I could ever use. So I would pass materials on. But I think the idea that it's if we just are looking around us at the landscape, if we see what's right in front of us, and I think that's really all I could do. I could only see a step in front of me, and there it was.
Your work seems very personal in nature, even though they're found items, they're found materials. And the fact that you
Mhm,
make a mark or you just slightly alter them in a way to show your hand in the process,
mhm,
how do you balance the tension between the deeply personal nature of your art
mhm,
and the
mhm,
universal themes of memory, history, and loss that
mhm.
these works evoke?
Yeah, I really don't know the answer to that. I think the best way I can describe it is I've given myself permission to not know what I'm doing. And in that, particularly in a process, if you're working, I've been working on the Undercover book series now for almost 2 years off and on. And it was only just recently that I started even attempting to frame them. I just didn't know how to handle it. And I spent some time and I think I figured out a way to sort of have the frame be part of the work and not detract. And that's often something we're all faced with as artists is how to present the work. And it's sort of reinvigorated because I was just, I think what I'm mostly looking for, if it's not routine, something to lose myself. And so all of a sudden I built this process of building the frames and that felt comforting. So for me, it's like, I just want to build this practice that feels like I can settle into a space with no preconceived notions of what's going to come out. I know I'm working with these books. I know I'm going to cut them up and try not to dictate too much where it goes. I think that I can't clearly see the work in the way that maybe others can because I'm just so in it. I think the work for me is like an essence of something pared down to its bare minimum that still has a vibration that creates a feeling. And I think what I'm searching for, what I'm sometimes even struggling to find is a sense of peace and harmony, resonance in the work. And once that happens, I can relax for a minute. But it is that thing, that magic, because it is. And I've talked to so many artists who work, and one day it's there, the next it's not. I think I know what I'm doing, and then it turns out to be something completely different. And so my only primary directive is try not to worry,
Mm,
try not to be too precious about it, and try to stay open.
yeah.
And I fail at that sometimes, but I think that's just being human.
Yeah. Working intuitively too really speaks about trusting the process, like
Yeah,
being open to whatever arises during whatever time you're creating and letting it allow time for you to just express it, whatever that looks like without any judgment, without any
yeah,
sort of agenda. And that's such a
yeah.
beautiful way of working because you get surprised a lot. Like, I feel like, sometimes when you go in with an idea, and then it doesn't turn out, you're either really
Yeah.
confused or disappointed, but when you know and you're open that whatever happens, cool, like, you get surprised in really amazing ways, and I love
Yeah,
that. That's
yeah.
the best part about being an artist, I think.
It's absolutely, I
Yeah.
think so too.
Now, Pulp has become such a vibrant hub in Holyoke. What was your original vision when you opened the gallery in 2019? And first of all, if you could tell our listeners about the origin of the name too.
Sure. Well, if I can just go back quickly, in 2014, my partner and I at the time joined together in a retail endeavor. She was an interior designer. She had a home shop. And so she brought me in because I was the dude with like the vintage oil cans and the love of rust and all things found. That started in 2014. And in 2016, it was building nicely. And then we had an election. And we can think back to what people were feeling in 2016. Very severe consequences to our bottom line, where we were making profits and building the business. All of a sudden, things just fell apart. And I hung in there for a couple of years, but basically had put everything I had owned into the business, all my sweat equity, everything. And then I had never been in retail. And so this was sort of a new learning curve for me. Before I had closed that shop, I had started experimenting with showing art and I just fell in love with it. And I showed Bruce Fowler, who is one of the partners and who owns the building that Pulp is in. And I showed Dee Nimmer. Then before it was Pulp, this was Paper City Studios, Ray Street Gallery. And I had been in a couple shows here. And I was down and I was visiting Bruce and I just made this comment that I just wish I could find a proper space to try opening up an art gallery. And he literally in that moment said, well, how'd you like to take over the space? And that was it. I think when I opened it, I just sort of curating and putting art together was brand new for me. I felt invigorated. I felt energized and I wanted to give it a shot. And I started a GoFundMe and raised enough money for a few months of rent. Started asking around, like asking artists if they knew other artists. And that was the beginning. It also, it was called Pulp Art and Objects. And so when I opened it, it was with this idea that it wasn't just going to be a white box, but it would be inhabited with beautiful items because I'm a huge vintage and primitive art fan. The first year or two was art and furniture and found things. And so that's what started it. That was the beginning. Pulp, our name is after the city, which has it was a huge paper manufacturing center, late 19th century, well into the 20th century, with over 30 paper mills and other mills. And so it's just a nod to the paper city, which is what Holyoke is known for. And also I love works on paper. And so that's part of it as well.
Ah, I always think that there are no coincidences, and the fact that
Yeah.
the space just happened to open up at the right time was just a kind of a wink and a nod for you to continue on that path. But you show 10 shows a year, which is no small feat. How do you decide now which artists and exhibitions to bring forward? And how does intuition play in those choices?
Yeah. Well, I will say that it always feels like a really privileged burden I have to figure out what the programming will be. It will be 7 years at the end of this year. I think there's been various times when I was really impacted by what happened in 2019 and Black Lives Matter and a waking up to sort of what the arts scene landscape was in Western Massachusetts. And I think that was a really good time to sort of reevaluate both as a gallery, what we're showing, but also what does the landscape look like? I think since then, it feels like such a fertile, nourished area. There's so many new artists that have come in, art faculty. It just feels like it's exploded out beyond what it was. And what it was great as well. It's just there seems to be much more diversity of voices, which I think is so important. It's complicated putting the schedule together and thinking about it. There's a few things that I've sort of committed to. One is December, we call it local show. It'll have 18 to 22 local artists. There'll be a one-time deal. So each year I'll have to find a new batch. And there's just literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of artists around here, everywhere. I don't have one set of philosophy about moving forward, but it is that there'll be a mix of local, national, and international artists who we show here. And in addition, once a year, I give the space over to a curator. And we did that a couple shows ago, and that was just a great success. It was mostly Connecticut artists. And I thought, how wonderful. I don't know who you guys are, and you're 30 miles south. And there's just a network of artists everywhere. And so I think the thing I mostly wanted to push against was this idea that either one, we're a stable of artists, which is hard. There's a lot of artists who want a home and to feel like they have a place to show. And I will say that they're over the 7 years is maybe a dozen artists that I've shown a second time. And it's because of personal relationships. I fall in love with these people. I fall in love with their art. I believe in their art. And so it's a combination of, I think, kind of an old school gallery template with this, I might find someone in Japan on Instagram and message them because the work resonates and speaks to me. And that has, I think, allowed us to just bring in any art from anywhere and treat it all as this level. It's just art. It's it's here for people to look at if they choose, and that's it. Yeah,
Mm. I feel like there's a beauty in being able to be the platform for people who may not necessarily have that access to that.
absolutely.
And
Yes,
kudos to you for inviting others to help in curating your show because
yes.
I can
Thank you.
imagine being a solo curator,
Yeah,
gallerist,
yeah,
and a working artist, it's a lot to juggle. And finding the right balance between your own work and keeping this thriving community through your gallery alive
yeah.
is definitely a balance. But, you've had work featured in the New York Times and Art in
Mm-hmm,
America, yet you've
hmm.
also rooted yourself in a smaller city, nurturing local artists. What does creative courage look like to you at this stage of your life?
I think it's not shying around from whatever your voice is. I think there's two answers. One is as a personal artist. And so it's just, this is my voice. It's what it is. And it's all I got. and, and being okay with that. I think in terms of the artists that we show here, there's voices. All artists have voices. And I think that many of the artists that I'm drawn to are telling stories of their life and their experience that often isn't easy to look at. And sometimes it might be about the state of our natural world. Seems like a lot of artists are struggling with, what's our relationship to animals? What's our place here? How do we make the world a better place? And I think then there's the personal experience of what it's like to grow up for a person. And that often comes out in the work. And I feel it. I sense that in the work, and the work resonates. It feels as if I feel the person. And I mean, I can give you a very good example that I
Please.
think, people, listeners may or may not know, but just one example of someone who I think is sort of a rock star artist in the area, Sean Green. We all know Sean. Sean resonates this beautiful spirit that I think you can feel in his work. And so there's this sort of synergy between the human Sean and his work. The more I find artists that sort of inhabit both of those things, the better Pulp runs
Mm.
because I feel like we have a partnership. We understand each other. I think I see their work in a way that makes them feel seen and understood. And I think that's it. I think in the day-to-day business of running the gallery, sometimes it's a business. Like
Mm.
I need to get all these ducks in a row and I need to, why haven't you sent me this? And where's the photography and where's the list? And the phrase is herding cats and it's not untrue. So for me, it's about setting boundaries for myself that allow me to do the job in a way that honors what I need. And usually that's good for everybody.
And I think it takes courage sometimes to set those boundaries because you are very public facing. People have certain ideas of what that means and what that responsibility is. And I think there are ways to be able to be open and expansive, but also to honor your own limitations and having a singular vision that works for you. And I think that is such a
Yeah.
valuable way of being courageous in your own practice.
Yeah. Well,
And what
thank
I
you.
love too is that the artists that you show in your gallery are not just people who went to art school. And I also am
Right.
drawn to quote unquote primitive art. Could you
Yes.
speak a
Yes.
little bit about that term and what does that even mean?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's not a great term. I try not to use it. It snuck out. I can go back to when I was 28 years old and I met someone who was a very well known artist down in Florida and also a collector of a lot of self taught artist work. And when I saw this work, it transformed my understanding and the way I thought about art making because all of a sudden I'm seeing work that was done on found cardboard or from broken furniture. These artists weren't shopping at Sam Flax for their art supplies. They weren't worried about a CV or writing some amazing artist statement for art forum. It felt like it was work that was being made simply because the person needed to make that work and wasn't about techniques or anything. It doesn't mean that the work's not sophisticated or isn't well executed. There's For me, it's about the miracle of the creative spirit. And I mean, one example for me is this woman, Sarah Lee. She's an artist from London, and we showed her for the first time last year. She didn't start painting until she was 40. She was a nurse. She was a single mom, a daughter in college, just trying to pay the bills. In 2019, she got hit with COVID. Her home on the Thames flooded, and she found herself isolated at a hotel. She ordered some paint materials and she started painting. And she's now just had a solo show at Rico Maresca in New York City. These voices are, if you didn't go to college for art, there's so many stories of people who just come to it. And often it's finding a place in your life where there's that time to do it.
Mm,
And for her, it was isolation and a lifetime of thinking, and it just has poured out.
mm.
And there's so many stories like that. The famous Black artist, Bill Traylor, he was born a slave, a sharecropper most of his life. And at the age of 85 in Montgomery, started painting on cardboard. And he's considered to be one of our national treasures of an artist.
Mm.
You don't have to look any further. The quilts of Gee's Bend, and there's just so many powerful examples of work being made all over the globe. That wasn't, again, about finding a gallery in Chelsea. It just was part of the culture, part of the community, part of the making. So for me, I don't even differentiate between craft and art. I just think it's all making and it's all beautiful. And if it resonates and has spirit in it, we're going to see it and we're going to feel it. And that can come from anywhere.
I love that. I absolutely resonate with that as well. And sometimes I feel like the people who didn't necessarily get the art training have more of a direct line to the expression of what they're trying to say without
Yeah.
the language necessarily in the
Yes.
history that sometimes
Yeah.
bog down some of the current work that we see out there right now.
Right. Yeah. And again, for those who go to school, God bless you. And I hope
Yes,
you learn
I was one
all
of
you
those
can.
too.
And I mean, it's interesting because we don't only in visual arts do we even talk about this category of self-taught. We don't talk about self-taught musicians. They're just musicians and it comes from, and it's just there. And so I hope at some point the Outsider Art Fair changes their title. I think everybody would like that. And at the same time, there's sort of acceptance and an understanding that it's not great. But what I saw at the fair, and we've only done it twice, is such a love of the art and the story. It's the stories of the people that are so special that I think it's why people are intrigued by self-taught artists, I think.
This whole podcast is titled The Art of Belonging. What does belonging mean to you personally as an artist, a gallerist, and a community member?
I feel as if this year there's been a real turning point with how I feel about my relationship to Holyoke and maybe how Holyoke feels about me. It is quite challenging opening up an art space. And I think nothing can prepare anybody for it. And you can't even imagine what it might be like sitting on the side of the desk. For me, I feel like I've found community. In our building, we have two wonderful young women who run this dance group called Loculus. Next door is the Lighthouse, which is this alternative school with De La Luz, this concert performing space. Right down the block, the mural group Beyond Walls, they collaborated with this space to create this beautiful gathering space. So now on Monday nights, there's music and there's art and there's food, and it feels really good. I think this year is the first time I can say, I think we've got a business here and a model that's working and is growing. And I just want to keep giving back to the community because I feel like there's such excitement here in Holyoke and it is so beautiful on the canal. I mean, the light here is just incredible. So I feel really lucky to have the space and to be able to kind of keep doing it. And for me, it means the world. I think for artists to get a call from anybody who runs an art space and say, hey, I'd like to show your work is so important. It is validating. It can lift the spirits. It can give you directive and an assignment and make you feel seen. And I think that is why we need spaces for artists to show. And I think I am someone who is very sensitive and I feel the world and I feel people and I can feel inadequacy of what I'm doing. And I know it's great. I'm one person running an art space. I've planted a flag and yet I see it. I see it in my emails every day. There might be every day 5, 6, 7 emails from artists looking for a space to show. And so it's so meaningful to have validation for your work. I would encourage artists to gather, find space, find groups to have studio visits, support one another. It's such a huge community here. We have 4 huge artist buildings in the valley. And yeah, I guess that's it.
Well, Holyoke has been such a vibrant community that really just has come through a renaissance. Like, I feel like there has been this sort of upward surge of creatives
Yeah,
in the community and
indeed.
interest in bringing people together in this other type of space. And of course, your location is gorgeous, right on the river. It's like, how can
Yeah,
you not
yeah.
get tired? I mean, you can't get tired of looking at that
No,
every
no.
morning, every day, the
Yeah,
reflection
yeah,
of the water off of the buildings.
yes, yeah.
But looking ahead, Dean, what excites you about the future of pulp and your own creative practice?
Yeah, I think the practice of creating a practice is something that just takes time. So this also feels like the culmination of a long journey. About a year and a half ago, I carved out space in the basement and created a studio space for myself. And that really shifted everything because I had been feeling the weight of carrying pulp, and I have 60 artists on the website, and it is a very demanding schedule. And we're a one pop shop, social media, photography, publicity, everything. It's just sort of unending. And I feel like I'm just getting better at doing it in a more efficient way and trusting that I will continue to find artists. And tomorrow, often Joanne Holche helps with Pulp. And so we're traveling to Chatham, New York tomorrow, and we're visiting a retired IT person who has 300 canvases in his one bedroom apartment, who's barely shown, and I've seen the work, and there's magic in it. And so for me, I think it's continuing to sort of be open to find work out there that I think resonates. I mean, I'm excited just to have the space, just to do one more show. It all feels like a miracle and a gift.
Hmm.
And I think the other thing that if anybody's considering getting into the arts, I think you need to hold on to this idea that this is service. This is the closest I have to a spirit house and service and a way to give back. And I don't necessarily know that community always knows that, but I think that's for me when I'm feeling overwhelmed or feeling selfish about my time or upset that arts arrive with no photography or just the day-to-day stuff that can be hard. But this is about sharing voices. And that's an incredible gift to be able
Hmm.
to share voices.
When I've come into the gallery sometimes, it really does feel like a sanctuary. I have to say,
Mhm.
there's a sort of presence and a reverence for the work that you put up on the wall. Everything's
Yeah.
carefully hung, all the juxtapositions are very intention driven, and you feel that as soon as you walk into this space. And
Well, thank
so
you.
that
Appreciate
in
that.
itself, you're almost stepping into this other world. And it doesn't feel like your typical white walled gallery. I have to say that first
Good. Well,
because
well, good.
I've been to many in my lifetime, and pulp just feels very raw, even though it is
Mhm.
all you do have white walls, but it's almost
Yes.
like it's a
Yeah.
warm white. It's not the cold,
Yes.
stark white
Yes.
of those New York spaces, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what advice would you offer to emerging artists who are searching for their place in both art and community?
well, I think for local artists, this is what I would do is I would subscribe to Valley Arts newsletter for Western Mass because you want to know what's going on in the arts in any town around here from Sunderland to Springfield and Westfield to Pelham. Bronwyn's doing an incredible job, I think, bringing it together. I think the first thing is to get out and see what's happening in the arts, see what resonates with you. I think that sometimes the artists are treating galleries just like going to send out 100 resumes and I think find a place that resonates with you. For me, I try and look at everybody who submits something through email. Sometimes I lose the strand, and I think that's just other times I don't like the person I'm becoming because I can't do it all. But I think the biggest thing for me as an artist, and I hope for other artists, is just stay true to your voice and just make it for you. I think make it for you, but then find people to share it with. And it might be a neighbor or other artists. The artist Andrew Zaru, I don't know if you know Andrew, but he and his partner Kim, they moved to the area recently and they hosted this wonderful afternoon of gathering. They asked, maybe 20 artists to bring a work of art, put it up on their wall in their studio and had snacks. And it was just a wonderful way to get together. And I think this is maybe a little pushy, but I think the responsibility of the artist is more than just making art. I think if you're making art, you need to figure out a way into community. And sometimes it's really hard. And sometimes you're going to be told no, but there's an empty storefront or there's some way to get together and do it. It doesn't have to be hierarchical. It can be open. And I think that's it. Just be open to possibilities. There's lots of empty storefronts in Holyoke.
Right. Still. Yeah.
So I think mostly just be true to who you are because you can't expect. And I think I think the artist and the art world is somewhat ill. I think that there's a lot of insecurity in the art making that comes through social media, that comes through comparing, and it just doesn't do anybody any good. And it's just going to make you feel bad. And how do you make work from a place of feeling bad or feeling otherized? And challenges aren't easy.
Mm.
But I do think just keep coming back to why do I make this work and why do I want to make it? And if it comes, it comes. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Just the process, really.
Trust the
Well,
process.
and get
Yes.
good photographs.
Yes. Yes. Get good photographs, please.
Goodness. It's so true. It's so true. Keep doing the work you love, but also when you are done, take good photographs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dean
Yeah.
Brown,
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
for reminding us that belonging isn't something handed to us. It's something we co-create. I
Yes.
so
Absolutely.
appreciate you sharing your story with us today.
Well, thank you, Donnabelle. And I so appreciate everything you do in this area. It's been remarkable. And I'm honored to be here and talk to you.
Thanks for being here. I hope something from today's conversation stayed with you or gave you a new way to look at things. That awareness, that pause, that's where things start to shift. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need it. You can learn more about my work and what's coming up at sonorous.light.com, and you can follow me on Instagram at @tohumishuman. Until next time, keep humming.